My name is David Scott, and I'm 42 now, living in this quiet little town called Elmwood Falls, tucked away in the hills of upstate New York. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your business, where the old mill by the river still creaks like it's whispering secrets from 100 years ago, and where the fog rolls in thick off the lake every autumn, making you feel like the world shrunk down to just your street. But here's the thing that's been gnawing at me for years, the thing I can't shake no matter how many times I try to convince myself it's just my mind playing tricks. Everyone in this town remembers the summer of 1998 differently from how it really happened. They talk about it like it was some golden time, picnics by the water, kids laughing under fireworks, no shadows at all. But I know the truth, there was something dark that summer, something that slithered into our lives and changed everything. And I've got proof they're all wrong, tucked away in an old shoebox under my bed, waiting for the day I can make sense of it without losing my sanity. It started innocently enough, or at least that's how it felt at the time. But as I look back, I see the cracks forming from the very beginning, like ice on a pond that's about to give way under your feet. I was 15 that summer, skinny and awkward, the kind of kid who spent more time with books and my old bicycle than with the crowds at the local diner. Elmwood Falls wasn't much back then, still isn't, really, a cluster of clapboard houses, a main street with a grocery, a hardware store, and the old church with its steeple that always seemed to pierce the sky like a warning. My folks ran a small bookstore on Elm Street, the one with the creaky wooden floors and shelves crammed with dusty paperbacks. Dad was always tinkering with some gadget in the back, and Mom had this way of smiling that made customers linger longer than they meant to. Me, I helped out after school, stacking shelves and dreaming about getting out of there someday, maybe to a big city where things happened fast and loud. But that summer, everything slowed down in a way that felt unnatural, like the air itself got heavier, pressing down on us all. It began in late June, right after school let out. The heat was brutal that year, the kind that shimmers off the asphalt and makes your skin sticky just stepping outside. I remember riding my bike down to the lake with my buddy Mark. He was the only real friend I had, a year older, with that easy laugh that made everything seem less serious. We'd skip rocks and talk about nothing, girls mostly, or what we'd do when we grew up. But one afternoon, as the sun dipped low and turned the water orange, Mark pointed out something strange bobbing in the reeds near the shore. At first, I thought it was just trash, maybe an old buoy or a forgotten fishing net. We waded in, the mud sucking at our sneakers, and pulled it closer. It was a doll, ancient looking, with porcelain skin cracked like spiderwebs and eyes that were too blue, too lifelike. The dress was faded lace, yellowed with age, and there was this faint smell clinging to it, like wet earth and something sweeter, almost rotten. Mark laughed it off, said it was probably from some kid's picnic. But I felt this chill run through me, even in that heat. Those eyes, they followed you, I swear, no matter which way you turned it. We took it back to town, figuring we'd show it around, maybe find out who lost it. But when we got to the diner, old Mrs. Hargrove behind the counter took one look and went pale. She muttered something about old things best left buried, and shooed us out like we'd brought in a curse. Mark wanted to toss it, but I kept it, hid it in my room under a pile of comics. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, too quiet, and I kept hearing this soft scratching, like nails on wood, coming from nowhere and everywhere. I told myself it was the branches outside my window, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The next morning, the doll was gone from where I'd stashed it, just vanished. I tore my room apart looking for it, but nothing. Mom asked what was wrong, and when I told her, she just smiled that patient smile and said I must have misplaced it. But her eyes, they darted away too quick, like she was hiding something. As July rolled in, the weirdness started piling up, subtle at first, like whispers you can't quite catch. The fog that usually waited for fall began creeping in at dawn, thick and gray, muffling sounds so that voices from next door sounded like they were coming from miles away. People in town started acting off, too. Mr. Ellis, the hardware guy, who'd always been gruff but fair, began staring into space mid-conversation, like he'd forgotten you were there. And then there were the dreams. God, the dreams. I'd wake up sweating, heart pounding, with fragments of images. A figure in the mist by the lake, tall and shadowy, reaching out with hands that weren't quite right, too long, too thin. I tried to shake it off during the day, biking around town, but everywhere I went, folks were talking about how perfect the summer was, how the crops were coming in early, how the kids were happier than ever. But I saw the cracks, Mrs. Hargrove's hands trembling as she poured coffee, the way Mark avoided the lake now without saying why. One evening, Around the 4th of July, I decided to dig a little. The town library was this dim, musty place in the basement of the community hall, run by Miss Lydia, who smelled like mothballs and knew every book by heart. I asked her about old stories from the lake, maybe lost dolls or strange happenings. She hesitated, then pulled out a yellowed ledger from under the desk, one of those old town records from the 1800s. As she flipped through, her face tightened. "Some things are better forgotten, David," she said softly, but she let me look. There were entries about a drowning in 1892, a girl named Eliza, who'd gone missing during a picnic. They found her doll washed up, but never her body. The description matched what Mark and I had pulled from the reeds. Cracked porcelain, blue eyes, lace dress. My stomach twisted. Was it the same one? How could it be? After all those years. Miss Lydia closed the book quick when she saw my face, said it was just coincidence, old tales. But as I left, I felt eyes on my back, and glancing over, I swear I saw a shadow slip behind the shelves, too quick to be real. That night, the scratching came back, louder, insistent. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, every creak in the house amplified. Around midnight I heard footsteps outside my door, soft, padding, like bare feet on wood. My heart hammered as the knob turned slowly. But when I sat up, yelling, it was just Dad, checking if I was okay. He looked tired, older than his 40 years, and when I asked if he'd heard anything, he shook his head too fast. "Just the house settling, son." But I knew he was lying. The next day, Mark came over, pale as a ghost. He said he'd found the doll again, in his backyard, half buried under the rosebush his mom tended. We stared at it, those eyes unblinking, and this time, there was a note tucked in its dress, faded ink on brittle paper. "She waits in the water." Mark wanted to burn it, but I stopped him. Something told me we needed it, that it was a key to whatever was unraveling. The heat wave broke mid-July with a storm that rattled the windows like angry fists. Lightning cracked the sky, and in the flashes, I thought I saw shapes outside, tall, wavering figures in the rain. Power went out, plunging the town into darkness thicker than I'd ever known. Candles flickered in windows, and folks huddled inside, but I couldn't stay put. I grabbed a flashlight and snuck out, heading to the lake, drawn like a moth to flame. The path was slick, branches whipping my face, and the air smelled electric, charged with something unspoken. When I reached the shore, the water was churning, waves lapping higher than usual. And there, in the beam of my light, I saw it, footprints in the mud, small and bare, leading straight into the lake. They stopped at the water's edge, as if whoever made them had just walked in. My breath caught. Eliza? Or something pretending to be her? I didn't tell anyone, not even Mark. But after that, the discrepancies started showing. At a town barbecue, people reminisced about past summers, and someone mentioned 98 as the year the lake was crystal clear, perfect for swimming. But I remembered it murky, warnings posted about undercurrents. When I corrected them, they laughed it off, said I must be mixing it up with another year. Mark, too, he claimed we'd never found the doll, that we just fished for perch that day. His eyes were distant, like he was reciting lines. Panic bloomed in my chest. Was I going crazy? Or was something rewriting our memories, erasing the darkness? By August, the fog was constant, a living thing that swallowed sounds and sights. I'd wander the streets, feeling isolated even in crowds. One afternoon, in the bookstore's attic, sorting old stock, I found it, a shoebox hidden behind crates, labeled in my own kid handwriting. Proof. Inside were photos from that summer, Polaroids I'd taken with my crappy camera. One showed the doll, clear as day, those eerie eyes staring back. Another captured the footprints by the lake, mud fresh. And a third, blurry, but unmistakable, a figure in the mist, watching from the trees. My hands shook as I held them. This was it, the evidence that everyone else was wrong, that the summer wasn't idyllic but haunted. But as I stared, a chill settled deeper, because in one photo, half hidden in shadow, was a face peering from my bedroom window, pale, with blue eyes that matched the doll's. And it wasn't outside looking in, it was inside, looking out at me. I stood there in the dusty attic, the Polaroids trembling between my fingers like they were still warm from the camera. The face in the window wasn't some trick of light or double exposure. I knew every inch of that photo because I'd taken it myself. Me standing on the back porch, grinning like an idiot with my new fishing rod, the house behind me. And there, in the upstairs window that was my bedroom, was a girl. Not a smudge, not a reflection. A girl with long dark hair plastered to her cheeks, skin the color of old porcelain, and those impossible blue eyes fixed right on the lens. On me. But no one had been in the house that day. Mom and Dad were at the store, and I'd locked the door behind me when I left. I don't know how long I stared at it. Long enough for the attic to grow colder, for my breath to start fogging in front of my face even though it was the middle of August. I shoved the pictures back into the shoebox, slammed the lid, and carried it downstairs like it was ticking. That night I hid it under my bed, the farthest corner, behind old shoe boxes and forgotten board games. I told myself I'd look at them again in the morning, with daylight and coffee and maybe some courage I didn't have right then. Sleep never came. The scratching returned, but slower now, deliberate, like someone dragging a single fingernail along the baseboards, searching. The next morning I woke up on the floor, not in bed, on the carpet, curled up like I'd fallen or been dragged. The shoebox was open beside me. Every photo was laid out in a perfect semicircle around my body, face up, as if someone had arranged an exhibition while I slept. My skin crawled so hard I thought it would split. Worst part? The photo of the girl in the window was gone. Just missing. A blank square in the lineup where it should have been. I didn't go to the store that day. I called in sick, voice cracking, and Mom didn't even argue. She just said, "Stay inside, honey. The fog's thick today." Like that was normal. Like we hadn't had clear blue skies the day before. I sat on the living room couch with the curtains drawn, clutching a kitchen knife I had no intention of using, listening to the house breathe around me. That's what it felt like, breathing. Slow, patient swells in the walls, the floorboards rising and falling under my bare feet like lungs. Around noon the phone rang. Landline, the old rotary one in the hallway that barely worked anymore. I let it ring 8, 9 times, then picked up because the silence afterward felt worse. "David? It's Mark." The voice was thin, crackling, like it was coming from underwater. "It's Mark." "Mark? You sound awful, man. Where are you?" A long pause. Then, so soft I almost missed it. "I don't remember getting home last night." I gripped the receiver tighter. "What do you mean?" "I woke up by the lake. Shoes gone. Feet bleeding. There's writing in the mud, David. My handwriting. It says I'm sorry over and over." His breath hitched. "I think I did something bad. Stay there. I'm coming to get you." "No," he almost shouted, then dropped to a whisper. "Don't come here. Just check your back door." I walked to the kitchen on legs that didn't feel like mine. The back door was wide open. Fog poured in across the linoleum like milk, thick enough to taste. Cold, metallic, wrong. On the welcome mat, written in muddy bare footprints too small to be mine or Dad's, were the words, "He doesn't remember either." I slammed the door, locked it, chained it, then dragged the kitchen table in front of it for good measure. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I called Mark back. No answer. Just endless ringing that eventually turned into that awful 3-tone wail you get when a line's been left off the hook. I didn't leave the house for 3 days. Food ran low. Power flickered constantly. The radio only picked up static, and one night, a little girl singing a lullaby I didn't know in a language that hurt to hear. Every mirror in the house fogged over on the inside, no matter how many times I wiped them. And the photos under my bed kept rearranging themselves. I'd wake up to find new ones added. Pictures I'd never taken. Me asleep with my mouth open. Me standing at the window staring out at nothing. One morning there was a shot of the attic from the inside, taken from the corner where the shoebox had been hidden. In the foreground, my own back was to the camera, head bowed over the open box, except I'd never gone up there again. On the 4th day the knocking started, not on the door, on the walls, inside the walls, soft, persistent taps that moved from room to room, following me. Sometimes it sounded like one set of knuckles, sometimes like a dozen tiny ones. I tried music, television, anything to drown it out, but the sound just crawled underneath everything else and kept going. That evening the fog lifted for the first time in weeks, sudden as a curtain yanked back. Golden late daylight poured through the windows, warm and normal, and for one stupid moment I felt hope. I stepped onto the front porch, breathing real air. The street was empty, but every house looked freshly painted. Flowers in yards I knew had died years ago bloomed bright. Kids' bikes lay in driveways that belonged to people who never had children. It was Elmwood Falls the way everyone else remembered 1998. Perfect, frozen, fake. And then I saw her. She was standing at the end of the block, where the road curves toward the lake. Small, barefoot, wearing that yellowed lace dress, hair hanging in wet ropes over her face. She didn't move, just faced me, and slowly raised one arm, pointing back at my house. I followed the line of her finger. Upstairs, my bedroom window. There was a second figure there now. Tall, too tall, head almost touching the top of the frame, limbs thin and wrong. It raised a hand and pressed its palm flat against the glass from the inside. The window fogged around the handprint. Then the fingers began to write, backwards so I could read it from the street. "Come home, David." My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the porch steps, unable to look away. The little girl lowered her arm and started walking toward me. Not fast, not slow, just inevitable. Each bare footstep left a wet print on the dry pavement that steamed and vanished seconds later. I stumbled back inside, locked the door, and for the first time in my life I screamed for my parents. No answer. The house was empty. Their car was in the driveway, keys on the hook, but Mom's purse was gone. Dad's boots missing. The kitchen calendar still showed August 1998, but the days after the 14th were torn off. I was alone. Night fell fast, like someone flipped a switch. I sat in the dark living room with every light in the house blazing, clutching the shoebox to my chest. The knocking had stopped. Everything had stopped. Even the crickets outside were silent. Then the lights went out anyway. In the sudden dark I heard it, the soft creak of my bedroom door opening upstairs. Bare feet on the hallway floorboards. Slow, patient, coming down. 1 step, 2, 3. I pressed my back to the wall, heart trying to hammer its way out of my ribs. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped. I couldn't see anything, but I felt the air change, grow colder, heavier, like the house had filled with lake water. A whisper drifted out of the blackness, small and sweet and ancient. "You kept the pictures. Good boy." I don't remember running. I only remember bursting out the back door into the night, shoebox still clutched under my arm, and sprinting through backyards until my lungs burned. I didn't stop until I reached the old mill by the river, the one place in town the fog never seemed to touch. I hid there until dawn, curled behind the rusted machinery, listening to the water rush past and telling myself it was over. But when the sun came up and I finally opened the shoebox again, every single photograph was blank, pure white, not faded, blank, as if the images had been erased while I ran, except one. The missing photo, the girl in my bedroom window, was back on top. Only now it wasn't taken from the backyard anymore. It was taken from inside the room, pointed at the bed, and I was in it, lying there asleep, mouth open, exactly like the new pictures that had appeared. But my eyes were wide open in the photo, staring straight up at the camera, and I was smiling. I bolted from the mill as the first rays of sun pierced the trees, my lungs burning, the shoebox a dead weight under my arm that I couldn't let go of no matter how much I wanted to hurl it into the river. Elmwood Falls looked deceptively normal in the morning light, birds chirping, a distant lawnmower humming, the smell of fresh coffee wafting from someone's kitchen. But I knew better now. The perfection was a veneer, thin as paper, and underneath it squirmed something ancient and patient, rewriting the town one memory at a time. I headed straight home, my sneakers slapping the pavement in a rhythm that matched my pounding heart. The front door was unlocked, swinging open with a gentle creak as if inviting me back. Inside, everything was pristine, dishes done, floors swept, not a speck of dust. Mom was in the kitchen humming an old tune, flipping pancakes like it was any Sunday. Dad sat at the table with the newspaper, glasses perched on his nose. They both looked up and smiled, warm and real, but their eyes held that distant glaze, like they were looking through me to some scripted version of the world. "David, honey, where have you been? We were worried sick," Mom said, her voice soft. But there was a hitch in it, a tiny crack that made my stomach twist. I stood in the doorway, gripping the shoebox. "You weren't here last night. The house was empty. There was something upstairs." Dad folded the paper slowly, his smile never fading. "Son, you must have had a nightmare. We were here all night. Watched that old western on TV, remember? You went to bed early." I shook my head, backing up a step. No, I remember. The footsteps, the whisper. I ran to the mill. Mom set the spatula down, her hands trembling just a fraction. "Sweetie, sit down. Eat something. It's been a long summer, that's all. Heat gets to everyone." But I saw it then, the calendar on the wall, still stuck on August 1998. But now the missing days were back, filled in with neat handwriting that wasn't ours. Picnics, barbecues, swims in the lake. Events that never happened, or at least not the way they were written. "Perfect day by the water," one said. "No shadows today." I dropped the shoebox on the table with a thud. "Look at this. Just look." Dad opened it, pulling out the blank photos one by one, his brow furrowing in confusion that looked too rehearsed. "What am I looking at, David? These are empty." "No, they're not." I snatched one up, the one with me in bed, eyes open, smiling. But as my fingers touched it, the image flickered in my mind, like a bad signal on an old TV. For a split second, it was blank, then back to the eerie scene. I thrust it at him. "See? That's me. But I wasn't alone. Someone took this." He stared at it, then at me, his face softening into pity. "Son, this is just a white square. Maybe you should lie down." Panic clawed up my throat. I grabbed Mom's arm, gentle but firm. "You remember the doll, right? The one from the lake? Eliza's doll?" She pulled away, eyes wide. "Doll? What doll, honey? We never went to the lake this summer. Too murky, remember? Warnings about undercurrents." But that was my memory, not theirs. The town had flipped it, made the danger the norm and the idol the lie. Or was it the other way around? I fled upstairs, slamming my bedroom door, and sank onto the bed. The room felt smaller, the walls closer, like they were inching in when I wasn't looking. I spread the photos out on the comforter, studying them under the lamp. The blank one stayed blank, but the one of me shifted again. Now my smile was wider, teeth bared, and in the background, Reflected in the mirror over my dresser was a small handprint on the glass. I needed answers. Real ones, not these shifting sands. That afternoon, I biked to Miss Lydia's library, the shoebox strapped to my handlebars. The community hall was quiet, too quiet, with dust motes dancing in the slanted light like tiny ghosts. Miss Lydia was at her desk sorting cards, but when she saw me, her face paled. "David, you shouldn't be here. I need to see that ledger again, the one about Eliza." She glanced around, then leaned in close, her breath smelling of peppermint and fear. "I burned it last night." It was whispering. Whispering? Names, dates, changing pages when I looked away. She gripped my sleeve. "Leave it be, boy. Some summers are meant to be forgotten." But I couldn't. I pressed her. "What happened to Eliza? Really?" She sighed, heavy and defeated. Story goes, she was playing by the lake during a town picnic in 1892. Slipped in, they said, but folks whispered different, that she was called in by something older than the town, something that lives in the deep water where the reeds choke the shore. It takes a face, a voice, to lure the lonely, and once it has you. Her voice trailed off. The doll was her favorite. Washed up days later, but her body never did. Every few decades it resurfaces, and the summer changes. Changes how? People remember what it wants them to. Happy times, to cover the rot. But there's always one who sees through, a keeper of the proof. She eyed the shoebox. "Like you?" A chill settled in my bones. "How do I stop it?" "You don't. You wait it out. Autumn comes, fog lifts, and it sleeps again. Until next time." "But it's August. Still weeks left." She shook her head. "Not this year. It's hungry. Been waiting longer than usual." As I left, the hall felt watchful, shadows lengthening too soon for mid-afternoon. On the way home, I passed the diner. Mrs. Hargrove was outside, sweeping the stoop, but she stopped when she saw me. "You found it, didn't you? The box." I nodded, wary. "Keep it hidden. Don't let them see." She glanced over her shoulder. "They're not themselves anymore." "Who?" "Everyone." She leaned in. "Including you soon enough." I pedaled faster, heart racing. Home was empty again. Parents out. Note on the fridge about errands. I hid the shoebox in the attic this time, behind the insulation where the roof sloped low. That night, as thunder rumbled distant, I lay awake, listening. No scratching, no footsteps. Just the rain starting, soft at first, then pounding like fists on the tin roof. I must have dozed off because I woke to water dripping on my face. Not from a leak. The ceiling was dry. It was coming from me, my own tears, but I wasn't crying. I sat up, wiping them away, and tasted salt, like lake water. The room was cold, breath visible, and there, at the foot of my bed, sat the doll. Pristine now, cracks gone, eyes brighter than ever, a note in its lap. "Come play." I grabbed it, meaning to smash it, but my hands wouldn't obey. Instead, I cradled it, a strange calm washing over me. Whispers filled my head. Not words, but feelings. Warm summers, laughter by the lake, no shadows. I fought it, clenching my jaw until my teeth ached, and hurled the doll against the wall. It shattered, porcelain shards scattering like teeth, but the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, insistent. Morning brought fog again, thicker than before, the town muffled like it was underwater. I went to Mark's house, banging on the door until his mom answered, looking harried. "He's not here, David. Said he was going to the lake." My blood ran cold. I raced there, bike tires skidding on wet leaves. The shore was empty, but footprints, small, bare, led into the water. And there, bobbing in the reeds, was the doll, whole again. I waded in, the cold biting my ankles, knees, waist, grabbed it. But as I turned back, the fog closed in, and the shore vanished. Just endless gray, water lapping. A voice, small and sweet. "Stay with me, David. Remember it right." I thrashed, dropping the doll, swimming blind. Hands brushed my legs, thin, cold fingers grasping. I kicked free, lungs burning, until my feet hit mud. I crawled out, gasping, and ran home without looking back. The shoebox was waiting on my bed when I got there. Open, photos rearranged. Now they showed the summer everyone else remembered. Me and Mark laughing by a clear lake. Picnics with smiling families. Fireworks without a hint of shadow. But in each one, tucked in the background, was the girl, watching, waiting. I burned them that night in the backyard barrel, flames licking high as the fog rolled in. The smoke smelled like wet earth and rot. As the last photo curled to ash, I felt it, a release, like a breath let out after too long. The whispers faded. Autumn came early that year. Leaves turned overnight. Fog lifted by September. The town sighed, moved on. People talked about '98 as the best summer ever. Mark forgot our talks, laughed when I mentioned the doll. My parents too, happy, unchanged. But I kept one photo, the one that wouldn't burn, hidden now in a new box under my adult bed years later. It's me in bed, eyes open, smiling, and if I look close, in the shadows behind, a hand reaches out. Sometimes, on foggy nights, I hear scratching, and I wonder if the proof is enough or if one day, I'll remember it their way too. Because deep down, I know she's still waiting in the water, and next time, she might not let go.